If we're part of the resistance, fantasy shows from streaming services may not be the best place to look for tips on fighting against authoritarianism. That might be especially true when it comes to The Witcher: Blood Origins. At least, that's what most critics claim. Not just that, but the franchise's future isn't shining the brightest these days either. Let's dive deeper into it, starting with a Witcher prequel. Though for the prequel to The Witcher, we're going to have to go back in time 1200 years before the adventures of Geralt of Rivia. And if you don't know who that is, then that doesn't change anything for the spin-off. We can slide directly into the almost entirely separate story of a time when elves, dwarves, and many other creatures at war lived close to one another. That is, until a vicious dictatorship comes about to rule all of them, making the situation even worse. The first character we come across is Eel, a soldier turned traveling bard who's already fomenting revolutionary spirits in people from every bar she plays at. In the scenes that introduce her, we see her take on a bunch of drunk punters who start harassing a young girl as she stabs their legs and smashes their faces on tables right before playing another song. Most of us immediately loved the character. Moving on to assembling a band of outcasts. Before long, we see Eel gathering up a bunch of outcasts, loners, and mercenaries, along with some former enemies, all of whom joined forces to take on a foe much more significant than themselves, to take on the royal palace. Meanwhile, in the capital's walls, Merwin, a young princess, is going through an awkward coming of age. She thinks she's meant to do great things, but soon realizes that she's going to have to make her way through a court full of men trying to get her power for their evil goals. Blood Origin does a great job showing the individual parts of autocracy, with Lenny Henry's Baelor leading that side of the show. The character is basically a druid who has a let people starve kind of mindset when it comes to governing the state that we later find out is because of personal inadequacy. It's significant when shows can add a personal touch to their villains. Moreover, some great moments. On the other hand, we get some more time with the band of rebels that have pretty good values. Michelle Yeoh seems like a part of her contract was that she would win a bunch of really cool fights. However, she's just as powerful as someone like the sword virtuosa Cyan. All the while, Laurence O'Furian does a fantastic job of playing the sinewy and sarcastic character of Fajal, and we couldn't think of anyone who would do a better job of playing the lesbian dwarf warrior Meldoff other than Francesco Mills. Meldoff even introduces herself by calling out to the others to follow her if they want to survive. The show's swearing may be a lot at times, but it's primarily comedic and reminds us not to take it too seriously. While most shows fail to show what it's like to get stuck on the wrong end of a bunch of vengeful tribes hell-bent on colonizing one another, Blood Origin absolutely nails it. Meldoff even says one of the best lines ever to her new group of allies, that their world is built on the bones of our people. Lastly, some critical set pieces. Well, it won't be the line that the character is most remembered by. At one point, she tells Fajal that if he fell in a bucket full of tits, he'd still come back up with a in his hand, but it's up there. All this is taking place while a bunch of really imaginative set pieces are trying their best to stop the show's world-building aspect from turning into too much drag. We also get a look at the backstories of both Eel and Fajal, such as the time when the two are forced to walk in between some psychoactive mist that brings in some horrific and sexy visions that are mainly based on the memories that travelers keep most secret. A short while after that, the gang is again trying to get away from a massive woodlouse. We will give the show props for always being exciting. If some of us out there are concerned that the show sounds good, but it's going to go on for a long time since it's on Netflix, well, fear not. It's only 4 episodes long. Netflix's The Witcher spin-off gets poor reviews amid Henry Cavill franchise exit. Coming up, poor critical reception. After Henry Cavill's unfortunate departure from the beloved fantasy franchise on Netflix, along with some horrible critical reception for the new spin-off show called The Witcher: Blood Origin, a lot of fans out there have started to question the future of the franchise on TV. The new Blood Origin series is the first time they've made a live-action spin-off for Netflix's The Witcher, with the show set thousands of years before the adventures of the fan-favorite Geralt of Rivia, played by Henry Cavill. Until recently, the franchise has gotten considerable buy-in from the streaming platform as they continue on to adapt more of the dark fantasy novel series by Andrzej Sapkowski. The same novels have reached a godly amount of popularity because of the video game series based on the books by CD Projekt Red. good. However, the road for the franchise has gotten very bumpy, at least when compared to how smoothly it was sailing just a few years ago, especially since Henry Cavill, the show's main star, has left the main show. There's a high chance that things could be taking a turn for the worst, keeping in mind that the latest spin-off by Netflix hasn't had the same effect as the franchise usually does. Next up, The Witcher Blood Origin hits a snag. The Witcher Blood Origin, ever since its release on Christmas Day, has gotten a lot of negative critique by both fans and critics alike, further confirming concerns that we've had about the franchise eventually going down the drain ever since news of Cavill leaving the main series came around. The spin-off currently has a rating of 38% by critics on the website Rotten Tomatoes, while its audience approval score sits at a staggering 8%. Ready Steady Cuts' Jonathan Wilson ended up comparing the show to more of a slightly related hyperlink that one might find if they were looking through something completely different on a website like Wikipedia, while Joshua Alston from Variety claims that it's more like a mini-series that was like a downloadable expansion meant to just grab some money that you find in some video games out there. On the other hand, some critics, such as San Francisco Chronicle's Bob Strauss, say that the series' main lead, Michelle Yeoh, did an outstanding job, but other than that, the entire show was just another waste of time. Even though it was narratively super swift and has some impactful action scenes, mainly because of Yeoh, it still ends up as a waste of the audience's time. Not just that, but Angie Han from The Hollywood Reporter said that the spin-off show was barely more than an appendix to the main show for fans who were curious. Instead of being one that can stand up by itself and have some selling points for itself, the show leans too much on the main series and ends up being just a meaningless add-on. Additionally, more critic reviews. The AV Club's Sam Bersanti talked directly about Cavill, saying that without the main character that kept the franchise grounded, the spin-off just turns into a completely unrelated fantasy story. It completely removed itself from everything that made the Witcher series so good. Despite there still being a boatload of bad reviews for the show, some people still enjoyed it a lot, such as Jack Seal from The Guardian, who had a great time with the show and said there was never a moment where the show felt dull. He said that if people were thinking that because it's on Netflix, they're going to have to go through it for 14 hours or so, but that simply isn't the case over here. Along with that, Alex Mady from Joe Blow's Movie Network said that the show is a great introduction to the Witcher world for fans that are just learning about the franchise, and a treat for anyone who's a hardcore fan of the series, claiming that it's a great show to watch while we wait for the main series to put out another season. Not just that, but the show is also able to hold its ground against some of the other incredible fantasy series we have come across in 2022. Finally, what does the future of Netflix's The Witcher look like? It's truly fascinating what some time can do, especially when we're talking about the world of streamable content. Looking back at 2019, The Witcher was the only thing anyone could talk about, and with its first season, it looked like Netflix was finally able to get its hand on a show that was like their Game of Thrones, especially since it had some of the biggest stars in the world featured in it. The future of the show never looked brighter. But now, just 3 years later, things aren't really looking that good for the monster-slaying show that Netflix offers. After being incredibly passionate about getting this project off the ground in the first place, Cavill has officially dropped the project from the main show. It looks like the streaming service's first attempt at broadening its horizons regarding The Witcher with its spin-off hasn't worked the way it wanted to, though it's not all bad since the streaming service put out 2 incredible seasons in the franchise and even managed to get a well-received, though underwatched anime-based spin-off film in the same universe. However, let's take a look at the reviews that Blood Origin got, and that the main show will probably have to climb a lot since it's bringing in Liam Hemsworth for the upcoming season. It's hard to think of a world where Netflix lets the franchise go anytime soon. That's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts on the show? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.